course of my endless seeking, destiny, one morning, made me discover the Isle of Dreams.
Hello and welcome to Rendez-Vous.
From the Weligama Bay. From chosen passages from the two books written by Count de Mauny, Gardens of Taprobane and Gardening in Ceylon, preserved at the Colombo Museum library, Rendez-Vous takes you back to the 1920s.
Yes, when Count de Mauny arrived in Ceylon and built the octagonal house on the little island you see behind me.
Shall I forget that morning of September, now 9 years ago, when quite by chance I first saw Weligama Bay, and in the center of its arc, the red granite rock, covered with palm and jungle scrub, rising from the Indian Ocean, an emerald in a setting of pink coral, enhanced by such beauty, I sat for a long while on a boulder overhanging the sea, wishing that this island, lost in the Indian Ocean, were mine. Picturing and planning what I should do with it, I felt my heart beating with the overwhelming desire to create, and to find in its peace the nearest thing to happiness. Yes, it would. It must be the home which I had dreamt of for so many years past. 6 months later, this anonymous rock, the abode of crows, had become my Taprobane, the island of my dreams, my home.
We now take you to where he lived in France, an insight into his interesting family history in France and in England till he decided to come to Ceylon. Maurice Talleyrand was born on the 21st of March 1866 in Le Mans in the Sarthe region in France.
Alors on va donc aller chercher les registres où on va trouver traces de la naissance et de Maurice et du mariage de ses parents et de la naissance de sa mère. Maurice est né au Mans, voilà. Donc son père était Félix Talleyrand et sa mère était une Froger de Mauny, Marguerite Adélaïde Louise Froger de Mauny. Et ses parents se sont mariés eux-mêmes au Mans. Félix a épousé Marguerite, les deux noms ont été accolés. Froger de Mauny Talleyrand. Et par la suite, on ne retrouve plus que de Mauny Talleyrand. Le Froger, on a laissé tomber.
I loved the little manor house of my childhood and youth. Its pepper pots and bell-shaped roofs. Its grey stone walls covered with crimson rambler. Tea was hardly drunk in those days. It was a luxury bought for 9 francs a pound at Shantung, the great Chinese shop in Paris. We were the first in our neighborhood to drink tea and were sharply criticized for being trop anglais.
Count de Mauny hailed from a noble and illustrious family. His grandmother's brother, Alphonse Lavallee, was the founder of École Centrale, or the Engineering Academy of France, in 1829. Alphonse Lavallee launched the first prospectus of the school in March 1829, and in April the same year the school opened its doors to 145 students. In 1855 the enrollments had increased up to 400 students. In 1857 he gifted the school to the state. The beautiful church of Saint-Sulpice de Favière honors the founder of École Centrale, Alphonse Lavallee, and his son Alphonse Pierre Lavallee, who was a great botanist of France. The bankruptcy of his father, Félix Talleyrand, in 1894 caused the ruin of the family.
Well, that was when he fled to England, got married and befriended Queen Victoria.
On the 23rd of June 1898, Count de Mauny married Lady Elizabeth Agnes Mary Byng, the eldest daughter of the 4th Earl of Strafford and Countess Henrietta Danesciol Samsue. She was a maid of honor to Queen Victoria from 1894 to 1898. The wedding of Lady Byng to the Count de Mauny Thalwand was a great function honored by members of the royal family. The same year, Count de Mauny returned to France with his royal bride, only to make the stately castle of Azay-le-Rideau his residence.
Long ago, I lived in a chateau, a gem of French Renaissance architecture, once the abode of kings. Its lofty walls were covered with delicate lace-like traceries and carvings, the like of which I discovered by chance on some of the ruins of the buried city of Polonnaruwa. Their steep slate roofs, mellowed by centuries, were broken by gables and windows. Its large round towers were reflected in the waters of the wide lake-like moat. The chateau had a park of 250 acres, avenues of poplar trees and weeping willows, and a river, the Landre, threading its way across the meadows.
Count de Mauny's intention to convert the chateau of Azay-le-Rideau into an English university for the sons of the English elite caused a scandal in French society of the day. The press protested loudly against the desecration of the noble historic edifice. The historical chateau of Azay-le-Rideau has passed into English hands. It had become not a university, but a boarding house for young men. The only faculty that flourished there was cricket. Back in England, he was torn with conflicting emotions. He was even ready to leave his wife and children in search of a new life.
The war had taken everything from me. I had to begin a new life or die.
It was not only the war. He was ostracized by the prudish hypocrisy of the Victorian era.
The love that dare not speak its name in this century is such a great affection of an elder for a younger man as there was between David and Jonathan.
I heard the call of the East, and incapable of any resistance, searching in vain for a last remedy, I answered the summons. To the East I came to recover the lost desire of my effort.
But it was a mystic flower that decided his destiny.
I vividly remember the first time I saw a Gloriosa superba in flower. It was in the greenhouse at a friend's house in England, near Bournemouth. I was greatly impressed by its form and color. It was more like a dragonfly than a flower. I asked my friend where it came from. He told me that he had dug it from the jungle in Ceylon and had brought it home with him. We began to talk about Ceylon.
He arrived in Ceylon in the 1920s and adopted this island as his own home.
My rock was nameless. True, according to one tradition, it was called Crow Island, and according to another, the Island of Roses, though no trace of the roses were visible. It was not marked on the old Portuguese and Dutch maps, but the blocks of red granite that lay strewn about its level summit and which served me as foundations gave me the impression that at some time someone may have had the intention of building a temple to Buddha. I christened the island Taprobane, the old Greek name for Ceylon. I like the name. It suits the rock, for the pearl shape outline is like that of a miniature Ceylon. I lay awake through many sleepless nights, picturing in my mind the house of my dreams for such an island as Taprobane. Indeed, it should have a certain semblance of lightness, an effect obtained by an adequate appearance of height, as in the castle which crowns Mont Saint-Michel. The central dome rising above the roofs and gables was to play this part. As for the shape of the house, after much thought I decided that it should be octagonal.
I was living in Mahavidya, Weligama, that's the main street, Weligama, from 1920 onward. I remember Mr. Count de Mauny as a small kid, by age of about 10, because we had some association of young students, and we got together, visited him one day, because he is a very charitable individual, though he was a Catholic. He used to give donation to various religious affairs and social affairs in Weligama. Then with the crowd, with the students, we paid him a visit. Good old days, he had a small bridge, and with the ladder, and we used to climb up and send word to him that we have arrived. And he is a very nice gentleman, of course little flabby. At that time his age was about 60. He always wears a short, blackish short, and bare-bodied, and fat and flabby, and always with smile. So we approached him, told him that there's a big temple ceremony, and he lavishly donated. You know, at that time, about 5 rupees mean big amount, very, very big amount. He gave 5 rupees, and we were very glad. And we asked the permission to walk about the garden and go into the interior. And I found it's a wonderful creation. He used to call Sudu Papa, Papa. And he used to walk along the beach nearly 2 miles, I would say, with at that stage, with the walking stick in hand and a nice little pup. Right? And he walked back also. But when they see that Sudu Papa is coming, people won't be about the place and loitering or spoiling the sea beach.
With a consuming love for this land, he adapted it as his own home. He took an active part in local politics and joined the Ceylon Labour Party at a time of grave, even dangerous friction between the European commercial community and the Labour Party. He was also a nominated member of the Weligama Urban Council. A keen promoter of arts and crafts, he opened up a school for Ceylonese carpenters in Weligama.
The furniture is mostly of the Art Nouveau style, simple but with perfect lines and proportions, and made of the rarest Ceylon woods. Nadun inlaid with ebony, sandalwood, flowered satinwood, tamarind, calamander. Every piece of furniture has been made by the local craftsmen from models inspired by French artists.
Stay tuned for more on Count de Mauny after the break.
We now continue Rendezvous with Count de Mauny's passion for gardening.
How often have I sat for hours on a rock overhanging the sea, where even before the laying of the foundation stone of the house, a stone bench of the Italian Renaissance had been placed there. Lulled by the sounds of the breaking waves, and amused by the turtles playing hide-and-seek among the rocks, I revolved in my mind the plans of the garden I would make. The Lover's Walk takes me to the stone bench overhanging the sea, where I sat 10 years ago, laying out the gardens and building the house. I make free use of plumerias in my garden as isolated specimens, mostly on the slopes so as to allow their flowers to show against the azure of the sky and the sapphire of the sea. Besides, they contribute a note of white, which is always restful in an orgy of color. The Sinhalese call the plumeria the temple tree, and spread its flowers in a carpet at the feet of their statues of Buddha.
Following the footsteps of his grand-uncle, Count de Mauny took a great interest in the gardens, which he laid out entirely himself.
How well I remember my reaching Haputale after a whole night's journey. From behind the dark green jungle hills in the east, the sun rose and covered, as with a mantle of gold, 600 square miles of hills and patnas. Here we are on the flat terrace on which the bungalow is built. Its back to the hill. The bungalow, having been built in a cut of the hill, stands on a terrace. A path. What a path. A lawn. What a lawn. The view is splendid. It brings one back to life. It gives one the power of realizing the possibilities of creating and its fascination. From the edge of the terrace, the tea bushes, like an unbroken mass of every shade of green, slope to the bottom of the valley, where a stream rushes over boulders. A pergola of 36 feet long, the full length of the house, was put up. I shall never forget how lovely the pergola looked. The thousands of blooms of every shade and hue, framed with the dark green, hung around every post. I go down to the water garden to hear the stream trickle over the stones.
Dr. S.P. Kularatna, who knew the Count de Mauny in Weligama, bears witness to his life
on his island of dreams.
When I visited his place, he showed me, look here, you know what this is. Just in front of the house, there was a nice pavement with the red colored cemented, and the Whedon said, no, this is my grave. He had put up his own grave there.
But his wish did not come true. Count de Mauny, while on a visit to Jaffna to landscape a garden for a friend, died on the 27th of November 1941 at the age of 75. He was laid to rest at St. Mary's burial grounds in Jaffna. Far, far away from his Isle of Dreams.
The new year begins in silence. The temple far away in the jungle heralds its coming. The Dondra Head Lighthouse punctuates the night every 15 seconds. A Heavens sparkle with stars. The moonflower shines like silver. The queen of the night fills the air with the perfume of incense. Sitting on one of the stone benches, I await the new year. Now the sun holds a levee in honor of the new year. I stand at attention on the terrace, waiting for His Majesty. The sky, the sea, the gardens are still wrapped in grey cloak of dawn. The scene changes suddenly. The great master of ceremony spreads over the sky a pale yellow veil. Punctuality being the politeness of kings, His Majesty enters at the stroke of 6. Solitary, ineffable, clothed palest gold, he rises slowly above the grey-blue cliffs, a golden disk surrounded by a golden halo. He sheds his radiance over water, earth and sky. The sea unrolls a trail of gold at his feet. Awakening dawn replaces it with a pale blue one, spangled with silver. The sea remains pearl grey. Nature, after this first effort, seems to stop and breathe. The deep blue sea reflects the white and red sails of the fishing boats as they speed over the bay, cross the coral reef, and melt into the horizon.